Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the CaseWare webinar, where we'll be looking at the HAT Working Papers version 20.00.04. My name is Anthony Launchbury. I'm one of the training or the educational media consultants at CaseWare. We're joined today by one of my colleagues, Georgie Fleming, an educational media technician. She'll be working along in the background, answering any of your questions, making sure everything's working as we go along. Now, today's webinar is a 45-minute webinar where we're going to be looking at the ins and outs of the new HAT release. To help us with that today, we've got a couple of subject matter experts with us. So we've got Andrew and Jonathan. I don't know if you'd like to say hello quickly, Andrew and Jonathan.
Yep, hello, good to be here.
Good morning, hi.
So you guys, excellent. So everyone's mics ready and working, so we're good to go. So Andrew's going to be here talking us not in depth, but giving us some background information and how the insights on how ISA 540 and 570 are being applied to the template. Jonathan's here as the audit product manager for CaseWare, and he will be able to help answer any questions we've got on functionality of the templates, update processes and stuff like that as we go through. So feel free to start sending us across questions. Now, with that said, a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have a question today, please feel free to raise your hand at any point or use the question field on the GoToWebinar app. We won't be taking live questions throughout the webinar. What we're going to do is save that to the end where we've got Q&A, and when we've got the Q&A, if you'd like to ask a live question, feel free to raise your hand and do so. If you want to send a question over to us and we can ask Jonathan or Andrew, then feel free to use the question field. Okay. Now, to help us as we go along, we have got an agenda. Before I do get there, I just want to say that the webinar is being recorded. Okay, so the webinar will be recorded and it's going to be made available on the CaseWare knowledge base. So if anyone you think would find helpful looking over the update today, then feel free to direct them to the CaseWare knowledge base, and it should be available early next week for you to view. Okay, excellent. Right. So moving on. Our agenda. Okay, so that should be loading up on your screen now. Okay, so this is the focus of today and what we're going to be looking at. And we're going to ask Andrew to join us in a minute to go through the HAT Working Papers overview. I'm going to be looking and talking to you about upgrading your engagement and what resources CaseWare Jonathan and his team have put together to help you first of all understand the update process, but also to apply it in a live example. Okay, so we look at the material that's available there, and as we said at the end, there's a Q&A session. Feel free to bring into your send us your questions in to answer within that session. We should have 5 minutes or so for that Q&A. Again, it's just before lunch, so I'm sure we can always, if there's a lot of questions, extend it if needed. Okay, right. So first up then, HAT Working Papers, the version 20.0.04 overview. What do you need to know? Now, first thing is the template for version 20.0.04. It was made available on the 23rd of October to AP contacts, potentially also your IT contacts, depending on how you have that set up with CaseWare to have those sent out. If anyone hasn't got the update yet and they need to know who their AP contact is, please send us a question in the question field, and we will get that information for you. Those people who have got access can download it from the CaseWare knowledge base, and that is there already available. With also alongside that, you'll find all the update guidance, update guides, and the release notes to the update. Okay. Now, this update is applicable for client files commencing on or after the 15th of December 2019. Quite an important point. There's new documentation that's obviously been which will impact your files. So you don't need to adopt it until the files commencing on or after the 15th of December. If you have already installed the template and updated it, or you've already started planning maybe, and you want to update and you want to maybe early adopt these changes, then feel free to ask a question in the question field. You've got the right people in the room today to talk about how to update the methodology with Andrew, and then how does that affect the file. We've got Jonathan here as well. Okay, so the right people are on the webinar for you to ask, so please feel free to. Okay, so first up then, we have got let's move this over the way quickly. There we go. What's included? Now, the first thing looking at here, the update disclosure checklist, then we've got updated risk forms, accounting estimates, going concern. So that's our ISA 540 and ISO 570. Then we've got some sundry items as well, which we'll cover time allowing. There's more within the update than just these key areas, but these are the core areas that we'd like to discuss today, because these are the ones that are really going to have a larger impact on your engagement files. Now, first off, we've got the disclosure checklists. Now, thankfully, not a huge amount of change on this. Andrew and his team have really been going through and tidying up, removing reference to the transition to IFRS 9, IFRS 15 commencement periods from prior to 1st of January 2019 and so on. They've all been tidied up and removed from your disclosure list checklist to make sure that it's as efficient as possible and you're not answering questions that aren't relevant anymore. So quite a bit of time and effort's gone into this disclosure checklist to make sure they're nice and up to date, nice and tidy and efficient as you go through. Okay, so that's the first area, the disclosure checklists. So make sure we take the update to get the benefit of those trimmed down or tidied checklists. Moving on, we have risk forms. So here we've got AC10-1 to AC12. Now, they've been comprehensively updated to deal with the new requirements of ISO 540 and ISO 570. There's a lot more involved within the update regards to the risk forms and building new elements in. So I think, Andrew, if I bring you in at this stage, Andrew, we can jump into a CaseWare file and maybe go through some of these documents.
Yeah, that sounds like an excellent plan. Thanks. As you said, it's the main part of this update, the main reason for the update is a change to the auditing standards. And obviously HAT are running a number of different courses talking about the technicalities of the standards. What we want to do today is just really look to see how those changes filter into the CaseWare documentation. So we've got up on screen in front of us, I think, the new AC10. Are you able to just jump into the actual audit file that you've
That's it. So the audit file just open up now. I'm going to go to the documents manager. Can everyone see the screen okay? Is that loaded up?
Yeah, we can see that, Tony.
Super, thank you, Georgie. Excellent. So here we go. That's our documents manager. We scroll to the top.
Fantastic, yeah. And this, I think, is a file that's been created in a sort of previous version of the template and has had the update applied, which I think Tony's going to take us through a little bit later. You'll see in the planning section there are additional documents added in. First of all, we've got some new documents up right at the top, headed AE, which we'll come back to in a moment or two. But going down to the planning section, sort of around about AC10, AC12, which the slide alluded to a moment ago, we have a number of new documents. So again, Tony's just highlighting that there for us. It would seem that this file has been created using our checklist approach to the risk assessment. Those are 3 documents you can see there with a C at the end. One thing we've done within our methodology is we've tried to streamline the risk assessment. So there's no longer a narrative versus checklist option. So those forms will disappear. And when you run Audit Optimizer, when you were to open AC1, the setup document, it will give you an option. I think it's question number 3. Yeah, question number 3 asks whether or not this assignment commences after the 15th of December 2019 or not. And if we were to answer that question, yes, it would then suggest for removal those 3 risk documents. And Tony's just answering that question yes as we go through. And if we can just pop back onto the face of the document manager, we've then got we've obviously got all these risk forms here, and those ones with C afterwards would then disappear. So that then leaves us with behind the FSA, behind AC10, which doesn't really change, to be honest. We've got new and improved risk documentation, which not only complies with the new ISAs, but also I think flows a little bit better than it did before. So let's just sort of dive in and have a quick look at some of these forms in a bit more detail. First one's AC10-1, which is our new inherent risk assessment. Quick word of warning here. What we've done is we've created a hybrid of the old narrative assessment and the old checklist option that you had. I think we've got the best of both worlds here. What we do is we ask you in the green cells to go through and consider risk. The one thing this does mean is that comments that you made about risk in previous years' assignments will not carry forward automatically to this form. So you will need to re-enter the risk information. But to be fair, that's probably quite a good thing after a few years to go back and actually just revisit what you or your team are entering into the fields here. So those green cells obviously will expand as far as necessary, so you can put in the full risk justification. And then as before, the conclusion would be entered onto AC10. And you enter the information into this green cells and then just sign off the drop down as Tony's just doing that. One thing to mention, I said the data wouldn't carry forward from old files into this form. Obviously, the data will carry forward into subsequent years when you've been using this form for more than 1 year. Tony's mentioned obviously 540, 570 a couple of times. I'm sure you're aware ISO 570 is going concern, and we've bolstered our documentation on going concern. To be honest, the largest difference is increased consideration of the going concern risk at the planning stage. So the second part of the AC documentation, AC-2, now takes us through a thorough appraisal of going concern at the planning stage. It's a number of questions. Really, I think it's here to force you and your team to think about going concern at the planning stage, think about how it impacts the audit approach, how it impacts the risk assessment, and also, to be honest, to get you to talk to the client about going concern at the planning stage and make sure they're thinking about it and they're going to get you the information that's necessary as well. Again, we've got obviously a number of green cells here. The ones beneath the questions will carry forward year on year. So where you got, for example, at the top of this form, talking about how the client assesses going concern, whether they do produce forecasts and budgets, you'd expect that to probably be a similar comment each and every year. So that information carries forward. And then on the right-hand side of the form, you can put in year-specific information that will get blanked out in subsequent periods. So that's AC10. Now, the one thing that's missing from that is consideration of controls, consideration of management override, etc. We've had a little bit of a shuffle around of the referencing, and that information is now contained at AC11. So again, if you can just jump back into the document manager, just due to the way that the update works, AC11 actually falls down one number on the document manager. So you will just need to nudge that up as we're doing here, up above AC12. But AC11-1, when we look at that, it should be very familiar. It's effectively the sort of second half of what used to be in AC10, asking us to comment on the client's overall control environment, specifically the point that inspectors get very excited about, which is management overrides and also overall consideration of controls as well. So no changes to that apart from the fact it's got slightly different reference, and all that information that you've had on previous year files, if you use the narrative assessment, will carry forward into this year. Because we've used AC11 for that reference, that also means that the area specific risk assessment drops down one reference to AC12. So again, just for completeness, I appreciate I'm running through these forms quite briskly, but just for completeness, if we bounce into AC12, this should be very familiar to all of you. It is our area by area risk assessment. This is where we justify the overall risk level for intangibles or tangibles, whatever the area is. And again, this form hasn't substantially changed. So any information that's been entered in previous years will carry forward seamlessly to this form. Now, those of you who are really paying attention will spot there is one change on this form, and we can see it in intangibles here, but it is on every single section of this form as relevant, is a question at the bottom of each section that says, is this area affected by accounting estimates? And to be fair, I think in terms of our documentation, it's actually ISO 540, the one that deals with accounting estimates, which is the big change. And this, from a user perspective, is the prompt for you to now go and do some serious consideration of accounting estimates. So the question after each of these sections is this area got an accounting estimate that's in excess of performance materiality? If you're answering that question yes, then you then need to click on the hyperlink that takes you to a new control document headed AE, obviously as an abbreviation for accounting estimates. What we've got here is, it is just a control document. What this is designed to do is allow you to track your work on accounting estimates, and also further down give you clear guidance on really what we're talking about in terms of what an accounting estimate is. The ICET unhelpfully defines it as a number in the financial statements subject to estimation uncertainty, which seems like a slightly circular definition to me, but it's these subjective numbers, it's the provisions, it's the impairments, it's depreciation, etc. So we've got lots of guidance there, which especially when you're using these forms for the first time, your team should refer to. But if we can just bounce back up to the top of the screen there, we've got 6 different risk assessments and audit programs here. We're working on the assumption that most audits won't have more than 6 material accounting estimates. And what you would do is you would list the accounting estimates on this form. So let's say goodwill amortization. What we've then got is we've got a risk assessment, which is hyperlinked on the left-hand side, and we've got a audit program, which is hyperlinked on the right-hand side. As we'll see a little bit later, all of these sit within a separate folder within the documentation. So out of the template, they have their own folder. They don't sit within the individual sections, and therefore they reference AE for accounting estimates 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. If you want to move them back into the fieldwork sections, you can do that, and the referencing will update. I think personally I would leave them within the accounting estimates folder and just cross-reference, but that will be a user choice. And as we've just done, by clicking on the left-hand reference, that takes us on to the risk assessment. The name of the accounting estimate obviously feeds through. You can see that goodwill amortization has been highlighted here. You can, obviously, if it's known at the planning stage, enter the value of the estimate into the program as well. I think we're just about into the audit program rather than the risk assessment. Could we just go back to the risk assessment for a second? Fantastic. So really it's a 2-stage process, which we've obviously just demonstrated back to front. But the planning consideration, the need for you to actually go through in detail and look for these estimates which are above performance and materiality, look at the risk that is involved. And it's not sufficient just to say, oh, this is something that we as the auditors produce, so that's breach of the ethical standard. Or simply, oh, it's a client figure, it must be right because the client's the expert. Obviously, that's not exhibiting professional skepticism. We've got to go through, we've got to understand this estimate, think about how it complies with 102 or whatever financial reporting framework you're using, and ultimately come up with both a risk level and also an audit approach, which is what this form does. And then the final part of the form, if we just go all the way down to the bottom of the form, again, as we go down there, you can see you've got opportunity to put in comments that are going to roll forward on the left-hand side and comments which will clear out next year on the right-hand side. But what you've got at number 10 is what is our planned audit approach? And that is your prompt to tailor the audit program, which we were in a moment ago. And in the audit program, we've got a bank of compulsory tests, things that 540 say you've got to do at the start, such as review what happened last year. And then you've got optional tests, so testing how the client has determined this estimate. So how have they worked out what the provision should be? And that's number 3. Doing your own calculation, almost like a sort of proof in total, and then comparing it to what the clients come up with at number 4, and using post-balance sheet events at number 5. And obviously talk about this on technical CBD courses, etc. But you've got a choice there. And the one thing I would stress is do tailor this and make sure the approach is very clear at the planning stage. So that takes us through the kind of key changes to the risk assessment and then feeding in to accounting estimates.
Super, thank you there, Andrew. One of the points that Andrew mentioned was the updated documents and how they come into your documents manager. So if I jump back to that quickly, just to show everyone what we meant by that. At the top here on the update, when you had to apply your CaseWare update, it will drop in the new documents into a folder. Now, because this is quite a tidy version, these are the only new documents here from this update. We've got just the accounting estimate checklist and so on that have all been built in with this folder. So you could just rename the folder in this case using the rename option to and then AE and accounting estimates. So I won't waste your time letting you watch my typing. But at this stage here, we can just drag this folder down to the correct location. Be careful though where it drops it in, because obviously the line on the back of the indent, but yeah, it's nice and easy just to drag those in. The other thing, I don't know if anyone, some of you probably, the eagle-eyed ones would have noticed here, on the right-hand side, I've got tags highlighted that are showing all the new documents. So again, this may be useful for you trying to get an understanding of what's been added or what's been updated after an update from HAT or from CaseWare with regards to the audit template. It just nicely clearly shows you, here's the new documents, here's the updated documents, and makes it a visual rather than just going through a list. You can also create filters as well, just to show you highlighted new or updated documents. If anyone would like to know anything more about filters and how to change this view to make it a little bit more effective, then feel free to throw a question in the question field. Maybe we'll have time at the end just to show you. If not, I'll send you an article showing you how to do it. Okay, so that's the big changes with ISO 540 570, and hopefully you found that useful just to get a bit of a recap. I'm sure most of you have already been on a CBD course update with Andrew, so it's nice to get a little bit of an update there as well. Repetition is the key to learning after all. So what I'm going to do quickly is jump back to the slides, and what else we've got added in here is, let me go. There you go, pre-plan communication. Andrew and team has also been adding in some additional documents, just some added value really to help you along the way. So areas like pre-planning communication. There's a new section in the Documents Manager that provides a nice Word template for the information request pack, which hopefully you should all find quite useful to help you obtain the information that we need for these updates from your clients. I'll jump into the file so you know exactly where that is. Let me jump into HAT file. I'm just going to scroll.
Sorry, I was going to say, just as you're doing that, this is obviously designed to help compliance with the new standards, but it's also designed to be an enhancement as well. And certainly the feedback so far has been very positive on it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a good touch to add to the template, and that extra value, which is always useful. So here's the additional guidance. You'll see there's PDFs and so on information. Again, there's tags on the right side, so we know they're the new ones. It will just open up in Word, as Andrew mentioned there. But that's now going to be available for you once you've installed the template and upgraded your engagement. So again, hopefully that helps you get all the information you need to meet the new standards. Okay.
Tony, we're seeing the PowerPoint at the moment.
Thank you, Georgie. There we go. There we go. So this is the new document. Sorry, guys. I see one thing on the screen, and thankfully Georgie steps in. Hence why we need Georgie in the background, keeping me in check. So here's the client information pack. If anyone didn't see it from the Documents Manager, here it is in the Documents Manager down here. So here's the guidance and additional resources section that's been added with the new content. Here's a client information request pack. And again, as to open it as you'd expect, double click and it'll take you straight into the Word document. Okay, so the next up then, what we've got is the sundry changes. Again, I'm going to ask Andrew to give us a little bit more guidance about one or two of them. You can see them on, hopefully everyone can see those on your screen now. Just double check. Okay, good. Click the right button this time.
Yeah, so obviously the first couple are relatively minor. Just again, in the same way we had the planning stage, a prompt to consider estimates of prompts at the fieldwork stage as well. The one which I know will be causing you, if you're a senior member team, more concern though, is the need to actually talk specifically about irregularity and fraud in the audit reports for all clients for December 20 year ends onwards. And obviously that's made an audit report issue rather than a documentation issue, but we have tried to bolster the template to give you a bit of guidance there. So just to show how that looks within the template, are you able to pop back onto the document manager for a second? Fantastic, and it's going this time, so that's good. So the assignment plan, which we have, as you can see, actually it's a new document technically, although the information will roll forward on this one from previous years. The reason it's a new document is we're just taking the opportunity to improve the format and make it fit the screen a little bit more easily. But if we go down to law and regulation, that used to be just a blank box. Now we've got a table asking you to put in what you think the key laws and regs that actually you're going to talk about in the audit report are. So let's go to health and safety or something like that. To be fair, I think a lot of clients, I wouldn't talk about health and safety, general health and safety in the audit report, but let's just use it as a nice generic example. And then document on the right hand side what your audit approach is. I'm not going to get enter that for the purposes of today. And then what you'll see is when you open up N2, which is our other areas audit program that deals with laws and regs and areas like that, at the top of the audit program, that information feeds through. So very much like the risks function does generally, it focuses your attention or focuses the seniors' attention on what they need to focus on the laws and regs area. And we've actually made the test here a bit more generic, just asking you to focus on the areas at the top of the program.
Super. Yeah, hopefully again, it's nice to have that information streamlined and nice presentable at the top of the screen as and when you open it. So yeah, hopefully that'll be proved to be effective. Okay, so that's the sundry changes. I'm just going to go back just to, here we go. That should be loading and back up on your screen now, just so you can get a quick, if you want to take a quick screenshot of the other areas on there. Now, these changes and all the areas that Andrew's mentioned today are all available within the release notes. What we'll do within the Q&A document, we'll make sure there's a link available so you can quickly go on there and get access to them yourselves. They are on the knowledge base, so you can all, I'm sure, hopefully all go on there and access them anyway.
They're on our website as well. So
yeah. So yeah, plenty of sources to get the information from. Right. Talking about the information and guidance, we did say we'd jump onto this as well about how do we update files and so on. I think everyone knows the indicator that they get when we open up a CaseWare file. You get a little bubble at the top left-hand corner, and you get indicator down the bottom right to say that we've got an update from the template. So just in case anyone's wondering if I'm not being clear, that's just that little bubble that pops up here when we open up a file. So just over here, the mouse is circling and down the bottom. Now this template, the file we're working on at the moment, has been fully updated. As you can see, there's no update warning here. But to help you through what the Audit Product Manager Jonathan and his team have put together with help of the Education Media team at CaseWare is to help improve the guidance that you've got to help you along every stage of the update. Now, from the knowledge base, I'm just going to go through and open up a web browser, and we'll go through and we'll open up. Just to first of all show you, it's quite easy to find on there. I've had a nice shuffle around on the knowledge base lately to make it a lot clearer and easier where to go. Again, Jonathan's been quite responsible in setting that up. Now, over here, we can go through to HAT, and then through HAT, we've got our further guidance, file update, and so on. This is where we're going to find our update guidance now. You're also going to find the release information, so the working papers version 20.00.04, and up here we're going to have the interactive guide. Now we'll start on the guidance. When you're on here, it's got the update notes for each release. Okay, so they're listed here. So for example, if you were looking at that tier structure for the update for 03, then you could go onto the updates notes here, and it will give you the information related to the tier structure for non-audit assignments. Now, by clicking on the notes here again, it will just take you through and obviously give you the PDF you can go through and start downloading. Now, this one here is the adding accounting estimates control folder. So these notes here will help us after we've updated. So this section here is talking about how do we move those AE, those accounting estimates documents, to the correct location within our documents manager. As you go down here, you can see obviously just moving and creating the folders and so on. So the guidance is quite useful. It's gone through from QA, from Jonathan and Andrew, to make sure the step-by-step process here is in place and it's nice and clear. Now, this is quite specific information to this release. Now, what we've got is something a little bit more generic, which will help you with just the standard update. What you'll see now here is we can go to an interactive guide. I'm not sure if anyone's looked at the silent update interactive guide. It's very similar on layout structure we use for both. Now, when you're on here, you can go through and start the course. At the top, there's just the information relating to functionality and content updates. Now, I'm sure everyone on the call here probably understands what the functionality and the content update section parts of the update are. If not, then this section is going to be very useful because it explains exactly what they're doing. They're both very important. Jonathan will obviously highlight the functionality of the CaseWare template and making sure we're updating that. And Andrew obviously will highlight the updates to the content from HAT with regards to like the ISO 540, 570 and so on. Both very, very important, but this will explain exactly what they do as we go through. So all we have to do is click to expand. It will give you screenshots and background information relating to each of these aspects of the update. From a software standpoint, it's crucial to stay up to date with the functionality updates to make sure that we can move from version 18 to version 20 and so on. So it's very important that we do have a good understanding of functionality updates, and we always keep our files up to date. See, the big effect for you and the most important parts for auditors is the content that Andrew's putting together and his team. So we need to obviously, again, be aware of how this is updated, because there's two stages to the content update. You get the stage where we update the new documents, we delete, remove documents, and again, add new ones that have been created, like the ones we've seen today, Andrew's mentioned. And then there's a second part to the content update, where it looks at updating the actual, the background, the content library. So this is where we can look at, say, the procedures on the work programs or the areas within the checklist. So there's two elements to it. So it's good to get a few people that have scanned through, get a nice understanding of how the process works and what each element is. Obviously, we can skip through this to a little bit more of the useful side, maybe to some of you would be to see the installation of the template. If that is the side that you need to understand, you need to have a gauge exactly what the ins and outs are of the new update and how to install it, then there will be a step-by-step guide on how to update your installation. Okay, and you'll see that this is there to show you how to install the template and also how to install the common components. I'd imagine a lot of you though wouldn't be doing that because your IT teams take care of that for you. So for you, then maybe it's just a case of jumping down to the scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3 and 4, where we look at updating files in particular stages. So we can look at updating in a smart sync environment. We look at updating a file where we've already started the planning. We will look at updating a file when it's just a clean file or it's just been rolled forward. So you can click on the scenarios, and from the scenarios here, you can work along at your own pace. But the good thing about it is it kind of prompts you to understand what each step of the process is doing and the importance of it. So nice, quick and easy. It's a storyline approach, and you can click through and it will give you some understanding. There's the bubble that I was referring to earlier, where we've got that update bubble in the top left-hand corner. Down the right here, that's the additional area, that warning triangle. So we know, again, looking at this earlier, we don't have a warning triangle within the file we're looking at. So again, a couple of areas to click out for. As we go through, you can, again, as you see, I can press play and continue and look at it at your own pace. Now, this is available to everyone, and it's available on the knowledge base, where you can go take a link. There's no software you need, it's just through a web browser. But for new users or even existing users, the audit template, it is probably a worthwhile 3 or 4 minutes just going through the steps. Now, I wouldn't recommend you look at scenario 2, 3 and 4. Choose the one that's most relevant to you, run through that, get a nice understanding, and maybe you'll find something useful to send on to your colleagues. Okay. All right, just as a quick update, just to make sure we know when we're in here, there's loads of information buttons, okay? So click through them. You're not restricted, you don't have to look at the information buttons, but they're there for a reason, so try and take advantage of all the additional tips and tricks we add into the guide. Okay, so that's the guidance side. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back into the slides. So There we go. So updating your engagement. If anyone's got any queries about updating engagement, I mean, I just mentioned there about if you're updating the file that the plan is already started on, or if you're rolling forward. If you want to ask those questions now, what we're going to do is, it's a bit earlier than expected, but if we move into questions, we'll run through those. So Georgie, have we got any questions that have come in so far? Also, if you haven't got any questions yet, feel free to use the control panel to send them across to us.
Yeah, we have. So got one for Andrew here. So when is the best time to install the update?
Oh, that is a very good question. First of all, in terms of your IT team or whoever in the firm's installing the template, as soon as possible has got to be the answer. In terms of when you apply it to individual client files, relatively complicated. It's covered in the release notes, probably the part of the release notes that needed the most drafting. First of all, it shouldn't be applied to jobs with year ends prior to December 19, so December last year. Obviously, you shouldn't be working on those jobs, but due to the pandemic, you may still be working on those jobs. So don't apply it for those older year ends. It's got to, because it deals with the new ISAs, it's got to be applied for periods commencing on or after the 15th of December last year, i.e., in simple terms, your December 20 year end. So that's your key date. It's got to be applied to any client file with a December 20 year end onwards. For the ones in the middle, so for any 2020 year end up to December, doesn't really matter. What it will do, if you apply the updates to these client files, it will give the option of removing all the accounting estimates documentation, and then you just got to add it back in next year through Optimizer. The only disadvantage to applying the update to, say, a June 20 file is on areas like going concern, etc. It may just ask you a few additional questions that aren't technically relevant to the period in question. It won't give you the wrong answer, but it will just mean one or two questions come into the template. So in simple terms, got to be applied for December 20 year ends. You can apply it earlier if you want to.
Awesome. So again, you can install it and you don't need to apply it. You can only apply to those relevant entities that you said. So yeah, you can install the template, get that done from the IT perspective, and then you're ready to go for those December 20 year ends.
Exactly. One final point, just to mention, if you're dealing with consolidations, the notes do go through one or two other technicalities, because we've got this thing called Brexit, which probably most people have forgotten about. That does make a few legal changes, especially where you've got a group with European Economic Area subsidiaries. The notes take you through that, but that is just the one complication, which I won't bore you with today, but it's worth just having a look at the release notes if that applies to you.
Super. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, we've got a couple of other questions. I think these are for Jonathan. So Jonathan, what happens if a user has already started the planning already?
Okay. Actually, Tony, you have dealt with a lot of this actually already. Can you just go back to the document manager?
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be quite useful if you show that up again.
All right, let's just give me a second, and that should be popping on your screens now.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously you may have already wanted to start your planning process before the release came out, and so you're a bit worried about what's going to happen. But as Anthony showed there on the screen, you've got on the right-hand side these little flags, these little tags saying new and updated. So obviously any new documents, brand new documents, you're going to have to obviously work on those. Those will come in. So if you do an update and take that update process, use the little indicator in the top left-hand corner when it prompts you, those new documents will naturally come into the file. You will be prompted to complete the tailoring bit, so you may have to do that as well, but that will bring these documents in and perhaps remove some of the ones that are no longer needed. Those new ones are obviously brand new. It also, as Andrew highlighted, will indicate where a document has been replaced, and that will be indicated as new as well. So what the documents which we call flat form documents. So these are the ones which don't look like normal checklists, where you just got a straight list of questions, but are a bit more discursive or whatever, or have different types of boxes and cells and tables in. Those flat forms, those ones, if they've been updated, will get replaced. Now, for most of those, that's not an issue, but any work that is done will have to be re-performed if those documents have actually been replaced. But for instance, where Andrew mentioned about AC14 with the assignment plan, as a lot of that information is already databased, so actually last year's file, although the document's been replaced, most of the information you have recorded on there was actually sitting in the database, so it's going to come straight back into the file. So in actual fact, you won't lose all that information. But documents like that, I said, the AC 10.1, 10.2, 11.1, I think it is now, where those documents are new, have replaced the old ones, obviously the work on those will be required. So that's the flat forms, that's the new documents. The other part of it is where it says you've got a file that's been updated. So these documents are where there's content. So it's probably a checklist where there's a load of questions and perhaps extra questions have been added or some questions have been amended. Now on those documents actually won't get updated if you have signed any part of that file as being done and prepared by or whatever. So that's something to bear in mind. If you have signed prepared by on any of those documents, they won't get updated. If you have signed an individual procedure off or tailored a particular procedure, those procedures don't get updated either, but you can check whether there's new ones which are required. So you will have to bear that in mind. But if the document hasn't been signed off yet, and if the procedures themselves haven't actually been signed, then the new stuff will just automatically get brought into the file. And so, the checklist will be updated accordingly. So the answer to that was the long answer. The short answer is it depends. But hopefully you've got the gist of how things will update. Okay.
So to back up as well what Jonathan was saying there, on the interactive guides, what you see on the screen now, so this one here, scenario 2, should be popping up. On there, flags up the areas where you've had signed off documents and you have the little indicators. The screens there Jonathan was referring to, just without us going to an actual updating a file, you'll see over here on the functionality and the content. So you'll see content update documents. So this is the update, adding the documents, deleting and updating. This is again where Jonathan was saying, if you've already worked on some of these, you're going to get an indicator over here when my mouse is circling. So just down over here to say that we've already started work. Okay, so follow Jonathan's guidance there. Go through the update guide. Hopefully that should send you in the right direction. If not, please feel free to contact any one of us. I'm sure we'd all be happy to help you through an update process. Okay. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Georgie, is there any other questions that have come in?
Yeah, so we've just had one come in as well from Pete, who's attending, but we might have to look into this a little bit further offline. But his question is, it doesn't allow me to update to the new version. What do I need to do? So I don't know if there's anything offhand that you guys can think of, but we might have to investigate that a bit further.
I would say just let's arrange a call with Pete, so we can have a look at the installation, see exactly what's going on, rather than me going through speculation.
It should prompt, it should recognise and prompt. And I say, if things have been signed off, then that might be the reason why. But we'll have a look at that.
There's a few reasons why. So yeah, I think definitely if we arrange a call after. If anyone else is having that problem as well, they can't update a file. There are a few reasons, like things like the security reasons. Your firm can set it up so you can't update a file. So it could be something to do with the data store. It could be something to do with the template installation. So if anyone else is having any problems like that as well, let us know. We'll arrange a support call and get someone to determine what the issue is, so you're not trying to guess what it is. Okay, so we'll be in contact shortly with you to get that set up. Thank you very much.
And then another one is, what is the difference between content and functionality? So I know you sort of touched on this, Tony, but Jonathan, if you can sort of give them a clearer difference.
Tony has. In fact, again, the information was there on the update guide, really. Just I suppose the way to note things is the functionality stuff is well, that's the stuff we get from Mercia. Mercia, from CWI. I don't know why I've even mentioned that. I do apologise. That's terrible. It's actually CWI. It's actually our parent company, is what I was referring to. We get functionality for audit system from CaseWare International, CWI. And that contains the extra features that we can perhaps use, some performance enhancements and things like that. And functional updates are what require every single document to be updated. And so that's the bit that really takes time, in actual fact, on an update process. So here in terms of when you look at the actual template itself, our template currently is the 20.00.03, that's the current one, and then the 20.00.04 is the one that's just been released. So the 20.0, that is the functionality. That indicates what level of it is that we've got from CW, from our CaseWare International firm. If you want to check on what the functionality version is, you can click the CaseWare icon bottom at the bottom right hand corner of the CaseWare screen. You can check select file version, and actually the first thing it will tell you there, in the first 3 digits, it will tell you the actual functionality version. So as we're moving from 20s have been out for a couple of years now, so the fact you're moving from a 20.03 to a 20.04 should be okay, and the speed of the update will be pretty quick. We are planning to release version 22 in March next year. Now that is important there, where you do the functionality that you, as again Anthony mentioned, that you do take those updates as soon as you can, because you can only jump 2 versions. So if any of you still have version 18 files, I really hope you don't. They really need to be up on 20s already. We've mentioned this, I think, in earlier user groups throughout the year and last year. And then when you come to March, when we release 22, please try and get those updated. And you can do those at any time. They don't affect what else is happening in the file. And in actual fact, the silent update wizard that will be released with version 22 means you can just simply update the functionality version, and you can set that running and can be done overnight or whenever it's a more convenient time, so that lengthy process of the update happens then. So that can be done separately in future and outside of the content update. So content is the second bit. So the fact we're going from an 03 to an 04 file, that's because HAT have provided us with that new content, or if we're providing
compliance reporting standards, compliance with the financial reporting standards. So this is the content.
Yeah. So that's the last bit of any name that we've got on our template itself. So the 03, 04, that determines content, and that is, as you said, important that you take those when they are required. So for the right year ends or whatever, so that you're up to date.
Definitely.
Hopefully that explains it.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was everything in the way of questions, guys. So thank you.
Super. Okay, then. Excellent. Thank you very much for everyone's questions today. Again, I'm sure if you've got more questions, you've got Andrew's contact details, so I'm sure you'll be in touch. But feel free to send anything to myself or Jonathan as well. We'll be happy to help you with the CaseWare functionality side of it, i.e. silent updates and so on. What you should be able to see on your screen now is the upcoming HAT user group on the 11th of November at a 10 AM start. The link's up here. I doubt you'll be able to click on the hyperlink, but if anyone wants to take a copy of the link, feel free to. It'll be available on the recording as well, and I'll make sure it's available on the Q&A document at the end. There's still time to sign up. I'm sure Andrew would be happy to have you come along if you're not already coming on. Okay.
Definitely.
Super. I just want to say thank you very much, Andrew, for taking time out today and joining us for the webinar. I think it adds a lot of value having you here. and a lot of value for the clients having you here to explain why you're adding the value and adding the elements to the pack you've added. Okay, so with that said, thank you very much everyone else who's joined us this afternoon, taking the time out to listen to myself, Jonathan and Andrew. Hope you have a lovely afternoon, and I'll make sure that the recording is following on the knowledge base shortly. Okay, take care everyone, and we'll speak to you soon.